Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. How did a single sentence at a wedding destroy my marriage in front of everyone? What can you do when your husband delivers divorce papers before the reception is even over? I thought I could control the story, but I never expected him to fight back, legally and for real. My name is Eris Lavenham, and I've always prided myself on managing situations. At 34, I work as an HR assistant at Morrison & Associates, where I've learned that perception is everything. People problems can be solved with the right spin, the right words, the right approach. I'd been applying those same skills to my marriage for years. Saturday morning sunlight streamed through our suburban kitchen windows as I prepared breakfast for my family. Adrian sat at the table, methodically reading the newspaper, while our 6-year-old daughter Chloe colored in her workbook. The scene looked perfect from the outside, exactly how I liked it. "Don't forget about the Hendersons' wedding tonight," I said, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "The ceremony starts at 6, cocktail hour at 7. Adrian glanced up from the financial section, his brown eyes distant. "Right, the one where your ex-boyfriend is giving a speech." I forced a laugh, keeping my tone light. "Miles isn't my ex-boyfriend, Adrian. We dated briefly in college, like 15 years ago. He's married to Mara now, and they're our friends. You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" Adrian folded the newspaper with sharp precision. "Because every time his name comes up, you get defensive." "I get defensive because you get weird about it." I placed a stack of pancakes in front of Chloe, who looked up at us with worried eyes. "Sweetie, why don't you eat in the living room and watch cartoons?" Chloe gathered her plate and scurried away, clearly sensing the tension. Smart kid. Once she was gone, I sat across from Adrian, reaching for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. "Adrian, honey, you know I love you. Miles is ancient history. We're friends now, that's all." Friends who text each other at odd hours. My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. "We're part of the same social circle. Sometimes we coordinate group activities. You know this." Adrian studied my face for a long moment. "Do I?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the counter. Adrian's eyes flicked to it, and I fought the urge to grab it immediately. Instead, I stood slowly, casually, and checked the message. "Miles, ready for our big day. Can't wait to see everyone tonight, especially looking forward to my speech." I deleted the message quickly, but when I turned around, Adrian was watching me intently. "Work?" he asked. "Wedding coordinator," I lied smoothly, "just confirming details." Adrian nodded, but something had shifted in his expression, a coolness that made my skin prickle. The rest of the morning passed in careful politeness. Adrian played with Chloe in the backyard, while I prepared for the evening, selecting a navy blue dress that I knew looked stunning on me. As I applied my makeup, I caught sight of Adrian in the mirror, standing in the bedroom doorway. "That's a nice dress," he said quietly. "Thank you." I turned to face him. "You should get ready soon. We need to leave by 5:30. He nodded and moved to the closet, pulling out his charcoal suit. We dressed in silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. My mother-in-law Donna called just as we were finishing up. I could hear her voice through Adrian's phone, sharp and concerned. "Adrian, dear, I hope you're keeping an eye on things tonight. Some people just can't let the past stay buried." I rolled my eyes. Donna had never liked me, always treating me like I wasn't good enough for her precious son. At 63, she was still beautiful and formidable, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Mum, we'll be fine," Adrian said, but I caught the meaningful look he gave me. "Just remember, darling, actions have consequences. Always." After he hung up, I forced a smile. "Your mother certainly has opinions." "She cares about our family," Adrian replied, straightening his tie. "So do I." The drive to the hotel was quiet, except for Chloe's chatter from the back seat. She was staying with Adrian's parents for the evening, and we dropped her off at their house first. "Be good for Grandma and Grandpa," I said, kissing her forehead. "Why does everyone seem sad lately?" Chloe asked, her big brown eyes, so much like her father's, filled with concern. "Nobody's sad, sweetheart," I assured her. "Adults just have grown-up things to think about sometimes." Donna appeared in the doorway, her expression cool as she looked at me. "Have a lovely evening," she said, but her tone suggested otherwise. As we drove toward downtown, Adrian finally broke the silence. "Eris, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Of course. Is there anything about your relationship with Miles that I should know? Anything at all?" I could feel his eyes on me, studying my reaction. This was it. The moment I could come clean, tell him about the weekend last spring when he'd been out of town for work, and I'd felt so lonely, so disconnected from our marriage. The moment I could explain how Miles had reached out, how we'd met for coffee that turned into drinks that turned into a drive to Lake Arroway, where we'd talked about old times and new disappointments. Instead, I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Adrian, I've told you everything. We're friends. That's it. I can't help it if you're feeling insecure, but that's not my problem to solve." Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition, but he just nodded and looked out the window. "You're right," he said quietly. "I guess we'll see what tonight brings." As we pulled into the hotel parking lot, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I'd been looking forward to seeing Miles, to the thrill of our shared secret, the way his eyes lingered on me when no one was looking. But Adrian's questions had unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The Grand Plaza Hotel was elegant and bustling with wedding guests. I spotted Miles immediately. Tall, dark-haired, with that easy smile that had first attracted me in college. He was talking to a group near the bar, gesturing animatedly. His wife, Mara, stood beside him, petite and blonde, laughing at something he'd said. "There they are," I said, pointing them out to Adrian. Miles caught sight of us and waved, his grin widening. As he approached, I noticed Adrian's posture stiffen slightly. "Adrian, Eris, you both look fantastic," Miles said, pulling me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. I felt Adrian watching us. "Miles, good to see you," Adrian replied, shaking his hand with professional courtesy. Mara joined us, her smile warm but her eyes watchful. "Eris, that dress is gorgeous. You always have such great taste." "Thank you, Mara. You look beautiful too." As we made small talk, I was acutely aware of the undercurrents, Adrian's careful politeness, Mara's subtle scrutiny, Miles's barely contained energy. He kept glancing at me, and I could practically feel the memories radiating between us. "I'm so excited about my speech," Miles announced. "I've got some great stories about the happy couple, some real gems from our college days." "Just don't embarrass anyone too badly," Mara said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, I would never," Miles replied, but his gaze found mine. "Though sometimes the best stories are the ones people think are secrets." Adrian's hand found the small of my back, a gesture that might have looked supportive but felt like a warning. "Well," I said brightly, "I'm sure whatever you share will be perfect. You always were good with words." "Was he?" Adrian asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "I don't think I knew that about you, Miles." Miles grinned. "Oh, Eris knows all my talents. Don't you, Eris?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my composure. "From college," I clarified quickly. "Miles was in the debate club." "Among other things," Miles added with a wink. Mara's smile faltered slightly, and I saw her glance between Miles and me with new attention. "We should find our seats," Adrian said abruptly. "The ceremony's about to start." As we walked away, I could feel the weight of unspoken questions and half-hidden truths following us. I'd spent months convincing myself that what happened with Miles was just a blip, a moment of weakness that meant nothing in the grand scheme of my marriage. But as we settled into our seats for the ceremony, Adrian's silence felt ominous, and Miles's knowing smiles from across the aisle made my skin prickle with a mixture of excitement and fear. The bride looked radiant as she walked down the aisle, but all I could think about was the speech to come, and the secrets that might spill out with the champagne. Monday morning at Morrison & Associates felt like stepping into a fishbowl. Word traveled fast in our small office, and apparently, several of my co-workers had been at the Henderson wedding. I could feel their eyes on me as I settled at my desk, their whispered conversations stopping abruptly when I passed. "Morning, Eris," called Janet from accounting, her voice overly bright. "How was your weekend?" "Fine, thanks," I replied, keeping my tone professional. But I caught the meaningful look she exchanged with Rebecca from marketing. By lunch, I couldn't stand the speculation anymore. I cornered my closest work friend, Lisa, in the break room. "Okay, what's everyone saying?" I demanded. Lisa glanced around nervously. "It's probably nothing, but... Well, some people noticed the tension at the wedding. Between you and Adrian, I mean. And that speech... What about the speech? Miles mentioned you two taking some trip together? To Lake Arroway. People are just wondering when that happened, since Adrian seemed surprised." I forced a laugh. God, people love to gossip about nothing. Miles was just being dramatic. You know how he is, always embellishing stories for effect. "So you did go to Lake Arroway with him?" "We went with a group," I lied smoothly. "Last spring, when Adrian was traveling for work, it was completely innocent." Lisa nodded, but I could see she wasn't entirely convinced. Adrian seemed pretty upset when he left. "Adrian gets jealous sometimes. It's something we're working through. He's been distant lately, emotionally unavailable. I think he's going through some kind of midlife thing." "That's tough," Lisa said sympathetically. "Men can be so complicated." I spent the rest of the day carefully crafting the narrative. Adrian was being unreasonably jealous, I was the victim of his insecurity, and everyone else was reading too much into an innocent friendship. By 5 o'clock, I felt like I'd successfully managed the situation. But when I got home, Adrian's car wasn't in the driveway. Chloe was in the living room with Donna, who looked up at me with barely concealed disapproval. "Where's Adrian?" I asked. "He had to work late," Donna replied curtly. I offered to watch Chloe. "That's unusual. He didn't mention anything this morning." Donna's blue eyes were ice cold. Perhaps he had things to think about. I knelt down to hug Chloe, who seemed subdued. "How was school, sweetie?" "Okay. Daddy seemed sad this morning. He kept staring out the window." Over Chloe's head, I met Donna's gaze. The older woman's expression was knowing and hostile. "Eris," she said quietly, "I've been married for 40 years. I know what a man looks like when his trust has been broken. I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it plainly. Adrian is my son, and I won't watch him be made a fool of." Heat flashed through me. "How dare you come into my house and accuse me of—" "Your house?" Donna stood, gathering her purse. "This house that Adrian bought with his inheritance? The one he put in both your names because he trusted you?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "You need to leave." "Gladly." Donna kissed Chloe goodbye, then looked at me one more time. "Actions have consequences, Eris. Remember that." After she left, I tried to focus on normal evening routines, helping Chloe with homework, making dinner, cleaning up. But Adrian's absence felt ominous, and my phone remained stubbornly silent. At 8 o'clock, my sister Vivian called. "Hey, I heard about the wedding drama," she said without preamble. "What's going on?" "There's no drama. People are just gossiping because they have nothing better to do." "Eris, I've known you your whole life. What really happened with Miles?" I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "Nothing happened. We're friends. Adrian is being paranoid and jealous, and now his mother is stirring up trouble." "But you did go to Lake Arroway with him?" With a group, I repeated the lie. It was innocent. Then why didn't you mention it to Adrian beforehand? I was quiet for a long moment. Because I knew he'd overreact, just like he's doing now. Eris, Vivian's voice was gentle but concerned. You know I love you, but maybe you should consider Adrian's perspective. How would you feel if he took secret trips with his ex-girlfriend? It wasn't secret, it just didn't come up. Honey, that's the same thing. After we hung up, I sat in the darkened living room, listening to Chloe's soft breathing from upstairs. Adrian still wasn't home, and I was starting to worry. I called his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Adrian, it's me. I don't know where you are, but we need to talk. Come home, please. He didn't return my call. Tuesday brought more whispered conversations at work and sideways glances in the hallway. I overheard Janet telling someone that Adrian had seemed devastated at the wedding, and that Miles's speech had been completely inappropriate. During my lunch break, I drove to Adrian's accounting firm. His secretary, Mrs. Chen, looked uncomfortable when I asked to see him. He's in meetings all afternoon, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Can you tell him I stopped by? Of course. But something in her expression told me she wouldn't, or that Adrian had left instructions not to be disturbed by me. That evening, Adrian came home just as I was putting Chloe to bed. I heard his key in the lock and felt a rush of relief mixed with apprehension. Daddy, Chloe called out, running downstairs in her pajamas. Adrian scooped her up, his face softening as he held her close. Hey, princess, did you have a good day? Mummy seemed worried. She kept checking her phone. Adrian's eyes found mine over Chloe's head. Did she? After Chloe was tucked in, we faced each other in the kitchen. Adrian looked tired, older somehow than he had just a few days ago. We need to talk, I said. Yes, we do. I took a deep breath. Adrian, I know you're upset about Miles's speech, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. We're friends. That's all we've ever been since college. Are we? Adrian leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. Because I've been thinking about it, Eris. Really thinking. And there are a lot of things that don't add up. Like what? Like last spring, when I was in Chicago for that audit. You said you were having a quiet weekend at home, but the neighbor mentioned seeing you leave early Saturday morning and not come back until Sunday night. My mouth went dry. I went shopping, and to the spa. Which spa? I don't remember. Does it matter? Adrian studied my face. It matters because you're lying to me. Right now, to my face. I'm not. Stop. His voice was quiet but firm. Just stop. I know you, Eris. I know your tells, your expressions, the way you deflect when you're caught. I've been watching you for 2 days, and you haven't told me the truth once. I felt panic rising in my chest. Adrian, you're scaring me. This jealousy, this paranoia, it's not like you. Isn't it? Or have I just been too trusting, too willing to believe that my wife wouldn't betray me? Betray you? God, Adrian, we're talking about a friendship. Are we? He pulled out his phone and showed me something on the screen. Because this text came in while you were in the shower Sunday morning. From Miles. It says, "Thanks for an amazing weekend. Can't stop thinking about you." The blood drained from my face. I'd forgotten about that message, had been so focused on managing Adrian's suspicions that I hadn't thought to delete it. That's not what it sounds like. Then what is it? I scrambled for an explanation. He was thanking the whole group for the weekend trip. It's just poor wording. What group, Eris? Give me names. Tell me who else went to Lake Arroway with you. I opened and closed my mouth, unable to form words. Adrian watched me struggle, and I saw something die in his eyes. I can't do this anymore, he said quietly. I can't live with someone who lies to me so easily, so completely. Adrian, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been having an affair with your ex-boyfriend, that you've been lying to me for months, that our entire marriage is built on deception. It's not an affair. The words burst out of me. It was one weekend. One mistake. It didn't mean anything. The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian stared at me as if I were a stranger. One weekend, he repeated slowly. Adrian, I love you. I love our family. What happened with Miles was just... I was lonely. You've been so distant, so focused on work. I felt like we were roommates, not husband and wife. So it's my fault. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that marriages go through rough patches, and people make mistakes, and we can work through this. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a notepad, writing something down. What are you doing? Making a list, he said without looking up. Of all the lies you've told me in the past 5 minutes, it's quite impressive, actually. Adrian, I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight, he said, tearing off the paper and folding it carefully. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next. What do you mean, what comes next? He looked at me then, and his expression was colder than I'd ever seen it. I mean, Eris, that actions have consequences, and you're about to learn what those consequences are. As he walked upstairs, I stood alone in the kitchen, my carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around me. But even then, I told myself I could fix this. I could manage the situation, control the narrative, make him understand. I had no idea that Adrian was already 3 steps ahead of me. Wednesday morning, Adrian was gone before I woke up. His side of the guest bed was made with military precision, and there was no note, no indication of where he'd gone or when he'd be back. I called in sick to work, unable to face the gossip and speculation. Instead, I spent the morning pacing the house, trying to figure out how to salvage my marriage. By noon, I'd convinced myself that Adrian was overreacting, that once he calmed down, we could work through this like rational adults. I was wrong. At 2 o'clock, a courier arrived with an envelope addressed to me. Inside were photographs, clear, damning images of Miles and me at Lake Arroway, walking hand in hand along the shore, sitting close together on a restaurant patio, entering the lakeside inn together. My hands shook as I flipped through them. How had Adrian gotten these? Had he hired a private investigator? The thought seemed impossible. My steady, predictable husband couldn't have orchestrated something so calculated. But the evidence was undeniable. My phone rang. Miles. Eris, we need to talk. Mara found out. Found out what? Everything. About us. About Lake Arroway. She's threatening to leave me. I sank onto the couch, the photographs scattered around me. How did she find out? Someone sent her copies of these pictures. Professional quality, like someone was following us. Did you tell Adrian? He confronted me. I admitted to the weekend, but I said it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. Jesus, Eris, this is a disaster. We can fix this, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. We just need to stick to our story. It was one weekend. We were both going through rough patches in our marriages. It meant nothing. Mara's not buying it. She wants to know how long we've been in contact. If there were other times. She's asking questions I can't answer without making things worse. Then don't answer them. Tell her it's over, that we're committed to our marriages. Are we? Miles asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Was I committed to my marriage, or was I just afraid of losing the life I'd built? I have to go, I said. Chloe will be home soon. But Chloe didn't come home. At 3:30, I got a call from Donna. Chloe is with us, she said without preamble. Adrian asked us to pick her up from school. Why? Where is he? That's not your concern right now. She's my daughter. Yes, and she's been through enough trauma without witnessing whatever comes next. The line went dead. I tried calling Adrian, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I drove to his office, but Mrs. Chen told me he'd left early. I went to his parents' house, but no one answered the door, though I could see lights on inside. I was being shut out, systematically and completely. Thursday brought a new horror. I arrived at work to find HR Director Mr. Morrison waiting at my desk. "Eris, I need to see you in my office." My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" "We'll discuss it privately." In his office, Morrison looked uncomfortable but resolute. "I'm afraid we've had some complaints about your personal situation affecting the workplace environment." "What kind of complaints?" "Several employees have expressed concern about the drama surrounding your marriage. There's been gossip, speculation, and it's creating a distraction." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. My personal life has nothing to do with my work performance. Normally I'd agree, but when that personal life becomes the subject of office-wide discussion, it becomes a workplace issue. "I'm placing you on administrative leave pending a review." "You can't do that." "I can and I am. Please clear out your personal items and leave your keycard with security." The walk to my car felt like a death march. Co-workers watched through windows as I carried my box of belongings, their expressions ranging from sympathy to satisfaction. At home, I found another envelope waiting. This one contained bank statements highlighting withdrawals I'd made during the Lake Arroway weekend, credit card receipts from the restaurant where Miles and I had dinner, even the hotel registration showing my name. Adrian had been thorough, methodical. He'd built an airtight case against me while I'd been focused on managing perceptions and controlling narratives. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email." With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop. In my inbox was a message from Hartwell and Associates, Family Law. The subject line read, "Dissolution of marriage, Lavenham." I clicked it open, my vision blurring as I read the formal language. Adrian was filing for divorce. He was seeking primary custody of Chloe. He was requesting that I be responsible for my own legal fees. Attached were sworn statements from witnesses who'd observed my behavior at the wedding, photos and documentation of my affair, financial records showing the money I'd spent on my weekend with Miles. But the most devastating attachment was a recording. My own voice, from my conversation with Miles on Wednesday. "We can fix this. We just need to stick to our story." It was one weekend. We were both going through rough patches in our marriages. It meant nothing. "Are we committed to our marriages?" The pause, the damning pause where I'd hesitated to answer. Adrian had been recording our phone calls. How long had he been suspicious? How long had he been gathering evidence? I called the law firm, demanding to speak with Adrian's attorney. The receptionist was polite but firm. "Mr. Hartwell is in court today. I can schedule an appointment for next week." "This is an emergency." "I understand, Mrs. Lavenham, but Mr. Hartwell's calendar is fully booked. The earliest I can offer is Tuesday at 10. I hung up and immediately called Adrian. This time, he answered, "Eris." "Adrian, please, we need to talk about this, about Chloe, about us. You can't just tear our family apart." "I'm not tearing it apart, you already did that." "It was one weekend, one mistake. People make mistakes, Adrian. That doesn't mean we throw away 8 years of marriage. One weekend that you lied about for months. One weekend that you would have continued lying about if Miles hadn't opened his mouth at the wedding. How many other weekends were there, Eris? How many other lies?" "There weren't any others." "How would I know? How could I ever believe anything you tell me again?" I was crying now, ugly sobs that made it hard to speak. "Because I love you. Because we have a daughter together. Because our marriage is worth fighting for." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like our marriage has been over for a long time. I was just too blind to see it." "Adrian, please." "The papers will be served officially tomorrow. I suggest you get a lawyer." "Where's Chloe? I want to see my daughter." "She's safe. She's with people who love her and won't expose her to unnecessary drama." "I'm her mother." "Yes, and I'm her father. And as her father, I'm going to protect her from this mess." The line went dead. I tried calling back, but he'd blocked my number. Friday morning, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. The divorce papers were official now, stamped and filed with the court. I was being sued for adultery, abandonment of marital duties, and emotional distress. But the real blow came in the afternoon. Mara arrived at my door, her face streaked with tears and fury. "You destroyed my marriage," she said without preamble. "Mara, I'm sorry. I never meant for you to get hurt." "Never meant for me to get hurt? You had an affair with my husband. You planned it, you executed it, and then you lied about it for months. It wasn't planned. Stop lying," Mara's voice cracked. "I found the text messages, Eris. All of them. The planning, the arrangements, the 'I can't wait to be alone with you' messages. It wasn't one weekend. It was weeks of emotional affair leading up to it." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Mara, I'm leaving Miles. I'm taking the kids and moving back to my parents' house. But before I go, I wanted you to know that I've given copies of everything to Adrian's lawyer. Every text, every email, every lie you told." She turned to leave, then stopped. "You know what the worst part is? I actually liked you. I thought we were friends. But friends don't destroy each other's lives for a weekend of sex with someone they used to date." After she left, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the wreckage of my choices. I'd lost my job, my husband, my daughter, and my friends. All for what? A weekend of feeling desired, of recapturing some fantasy of who I used to be. I tried calling Vivian, but she let it go to voicemail. I tried calling my parents, but my mother's voice was cool and disappointed. "Eris, honey, we love you, but we can't support what you've done. Adrian is a good man, and Chloe needs stability right now." Even my own family was choosing Adrian's side. Sunday evening, I drove past the house where Chloe was staying with Adrian's parents. Through the window, I could see them reading together on the couch. Adrian, Chloe, Donna, and Paul. A family unit that no longer included me. As I watched, Adrian looked up and saw my car. He said something to his father, who got up and closed the curtains. I sat there for a long time, engine running, realizing that this was my consequence. Not just the divorce, not just the custody battle, but the complete and total loss of the life I'd taken for granted. Adrian had warned me. His mother had warned me. Even Vivian had tried to make me see reason. But I'd been so sure I could manage the situation, control the narrative, make everyone understand that it wasn't really my fault. Now, facing the ruins of my marriage and family, I finally understood what Adrian had been trying to tell me all along. Actions have consequences. And mine were just beginning. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. I'd managed to scrape together enough money for a lawyer, a tired-looking man named Peterson who specialized in difficult divorce cases, which apparently meant cases where the wife had been caught cheating. "I'll be honest with you, Mrs. Lavenham," Peterson said during our consultation. "Your husband's legal team has built an exceptionally strong case. The documentation, the witness statements, the recorded conversations, it's all admissible, and it paints a very clear picture." "But I'm her mother," I protested. "Doesn't that count for something?" "Of course, but the court's primary concern is the child's best interests. And right now, your husband appears to be the more stable parent." "Stable? I made one mistake. One mistake that you lied about for months, that cost you your job, and that resulted in the destruction of another marriage. From the court's perspective, that raises questions about your judgment and reliability." I wanted to argue, to explain that it wasn't that simple, that Adrian bore some responsibility for the state of our marriage. But Peterson's expression told me he'd heard it all before. The days leading up to the hearing were a nightmare of preparation and panic. I practiced my testimony, trying to find ways to explain my actions that didn't sound like excuses. I researched character witnesses, only to discover that most of our mutual friends had chosen Adrian's side. The night before the hearing, Vivian finally returned my calls. "I've been thinking about what to say to you," she began, her voice careful and measured. "I need your support, Viv. I need someone to testify that I'm a good mother, that I made a mistake, but I'm not a monster." "Are you a good mother, Eris?" The question caught me off guard. Of course I am. How can you even ask that? Because good mothers don't lie to their children's fathers. Good mothers don't create chaos and instability in their families. Good mothers don't put their own selfish desires ahead of their children's well-being. I never put my desires ahead of Chloe. Didn't you? When you decided to have an affair, did you think about how it would affect her? When you lied to Adrian for months, did you consider what would happen if the truth came out? When you chose to meet Miles at that lake, did you think about your daughter at all? I was quiet, unable to answer. I love you, Eris. You're my sister, but I can't stand up in court and lie for you, and I can't watch you destroy what's left of your relationship with Chloe by continuing to act like you're the victim here. So you're abandoning me too? I'm trying to save you from yourself, but you have to want to be saved. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, hoping to project stability and remorse. But as I walked into the courthouse, I felt like I was walking to my own execution. Adrian was already there with his legal team, not just one lawyer, but 3. He looked calm, composed, every inch the responsible father and wronged husband. When our eyes met across the hallway, there was no anger in his expression, just a cold determination that chilled me to the bone. The hearing itself was a systematic dismantling of my character and credibility. Adrian's lawyers presented their evidence methodically: the photos, the bank records, the text messages, the recorded phone calls. They called witnesses who testified to my deception and the impact of my actions on others. Mara took the stand, her voice steady as she described how my affair had destroyed her marriage and traumatized her children. She spoke about the lies I'd told, the friendship I'd betrayed, the trust I'd shattered. Mrs. Lavenham presented herself as a friend and confidant, Mara testified. She came to my home, ate at my table, played with my children, all while carrying on an affair with my husband. When I think about the level of deception required to maintain that facade, I have to question her fitness as a role model for any child. Donna testified about my character, painting a picture of someone who was manipulative and self-serving. She spoke about conversations where I'd blamed Adrian for my unhappiness, where I'd justified my actions by claiming he was emotionally unavailable. My son worked 2 jobs to provide for his family, Donna said, her voice strong and clear. He came home every night, helped with homework, read bedtime stories, planned family vacations. If Mrs. Lavenham found him emotionally unavailable, perhaps it's because he was exhausted from trying to hold their family together while she was planning her betrayal. Even some of my co-workers testified, describing how I'd gossiped about Adrian at work, calling him boring and controlling, setting the stage for my affair by painting him as an unsympathetic husband. When it was my turn to testify, I tried to explain my side of the story. I talked about feeling lonely and disconnected, about the pressures of marriage and motherhood, about how the affair was a moment of weakness rather than a calculated betrayal. But Adrian's lead attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Hartwell, was relentless in her cross-examination. Mrs. Lavenham, you've testified that your affair was a moment of weakness, but the evidence shows weeks of text messages and phone calls with Mr. Duvall leading up to your weekend together. How do you reconcile that with your claim of spontaneous weakness? The emotional connection developed over time, but the physical affair was just that weekend. I see. And during those weeks of emotional affair, did you consider the impact on your daughter? Of course I thought about Chloe. She's the most important thing in my life. Important enough to risk destroying her family. I never thought it would come to this. You never thought you'd be caught. That's not what I meant. What did you mean, Mrs. Lavenham? I struggled to find words that didn't make me sound selfish or calculating, but every answer I gave seemed to dig the hole deeper. The judge, an older woman with kind but stern eyes, listened to everything with careful attention. When the testimony was finished, she asked to speak with Chloe privately in her chambers. The wait was excruciating. Adrian and I sat on opposite sides of the hallway, not speaking, barely looking at each other. I tried to read his expression, to find some hint of the man I'd married, but he might as well have been a stranger. When the judge returned, her decision was swift and decisive. In the matter of custody, I find that the child's best interests are served by granting primary physical custody to the father, with supervised visitation for the mother, pending completion of family counseling and a psychological evaluation. The words hit me like physical blows. Supervised visitation. Psychological evaluation. I was being treated like a danger to my own child. "Your Honor," I started to say, but Peterson placed a restraining hand on my arm. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm ordering that Mrs. Lavenham complete a program for adultery recovery and codependency before unsupervised visitation can be considered." The court recognizes that infidelity, while morally reprehensible, does not automatically disqualify someone from parenthood. However, the pattern of deception and manipulation demonstrated in this case raises serious concerns about Mrs. Lavenham's ability to provide a stable, honest environment for the child. As the judge's words sank in, I felt something break inside me. This wasn't just about losing custody. It was about being labeled officially and legally as an unfit mother. After the hearing, Adrian approached me in the hallway. For a moment, I thought he might offer some comfort, some acknowledgement of what we'd once meant to each other. Instead, he handed me an envelope. "What is this?" I asked. "A final gift," he said quietly. "Documentation of every lie you told during this process. Every contradiction, every attempt to manipulate the narrative. I thought you should see how it looks from the outside." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a detailed timeline of my deception, starting with the first text messages with Miles and ending with my testimony that morning. Each lie was highlighted, cross-referenced, and annotated with evidence. It was a masterpiece of methodical destruction. "Why?" I whispered. "Why go to all this trouble?" Adrian looked at me for a long moment, and for the first time in weeks, I saw emotion in his eyes. Not anger, but something deeper and more painful. "Because I loved you," he said simply. "Because I trusted you completely, and you used that trust to betray me in the most fundamental way possible. Because our daughter deserves better than a mother who lies as easily as breathing." "Adrian, No." He held up a hand to stop me. "You had 8 years to be honest with me, 8 years to be the wife and mother you claim to be. You chose deception instead. Now you get to live with the consequences." He turned to walk away, then stopped. "Chloe asks about you. She wants to know why Mommy doesn't live with us anymore. Do you know what I tell her?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "I tell her that sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt the people they love, and that Mommy is learning how to make better choices. I don't tell her that her mother is a liar and a cheat. I don't tell her that you chose a weekend with your ex-boyfriend over our family. I protect her from the truth about who you really are." "That's not who I really am," I whispered. "Isn't it?" Adrian's voice was gentle, almost pitying. "Because from where I'm standing, this is exactly who you are. Someone who lies when it's convenient, who blames others for her choices, who destroys lives and then plays the victim." He walked away then, leaving me standing alone in the courthouse hallway, clutching the evidence of my own destruction. As I watched him go, I realized that this was my final consequence. Not the divorce, not the custody ruling, not the loss of my job or my friends. The final consequence was seeing myself clearly for the first time, through the eyes of the man I'd betrayed. And I didn't like what I saw. But it was too late to change it. Too late to take back the lies, the affair, the months of deception. Too late to be the person Adrian had believed I was, the mother Chloe deserved. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, carrying my envelope of evidence and the weight of my choices. Somewhere across town, Adrian was picking up our daughter from school, taking her home to the life they were building without me. And I was going home to an empty house, to face the woman I'd become.